All right, everybody. I hope you're doing great tonight. And it's really me. This is not a recording. It is I, myself, who am here. So I'm still virtual, but I am doing this in live time. So appreciate you bearing with me the last couple of weeks for recording instead of live and in person. And we'll have to resume that the next 2 Sundays. We are taking some family time, and but I wanted to be here tonight because of that. And so anyway, I'm glad you're here. I see Margaret Anthony is here, and I see the Knoxes are here, and I see Shirley Hurst is watching. So may have a few more that are watching on YouTube as well. I don't see them on here as far as their names, but I definitely see their and I see their the numbers. So anyway, I am ready to go. How about you? It's 5 o'clock, so I hope you're doing great. Appreciate everybody praying for my dad, and he is. My mom was able to get up there and visit him this afternoon, and he is doing good and getting better. So I hope to come home midweek. So I see the Dosses are on here. Glad to have Miss Nancy on here, and I hope everybody's having a good Memorial Day weekend, and the weather is just sublime, as they say. Glad to have you join me. I don't know if you're outside on your porch or your deck or what, but hopefully you're getting to enjoy this good weather. The Guthries are on here. Sandy and Rodney are on here as well. So Sandy and Rodney, I'm going to have to come upstairs, I think, in the balcony and say hi to you guys. I see you from when I go down to make the announcements, and I look back and I see you up there, but I don't get to speak with you. So anyway, greetings, and hope everybody's doing great. So, all right, let's let's begin, and maybe you got to read the for a few minutes before the class time started, and anyway, hopefully you got to read that. If not, that is quite all right. We're going to read the second one, the longer one, here in class. First one's kind of short, and you'll be able to read along as we're talking about it. But let's go ahead and start with a prayer, and we'll jump right back in. So, Father in heaven, we thank you for all of your blessings. Thank you for watching out for us during the storms of life. It's so good to see our folks coming back, worshiping in person today. There's so many more that I saw today that I haven't seen yet, and just good to be together. And Father, keep us safe on this Memorial Day weekend. Help us to remember those that have given so much, so that we can enjoy these freedoms, and help us not to take those for granted. Thank you for your son Jesus. We thank you for the Gospel of John and what we can learn from him about your son. And so Jesus, we pray. Amen. All right. Looks like Sarah Roberts is here, so glad to have you here as well. All right. So just as a review, John's purpose in writing, and I know I do this every time, but I really just try to drive this point home that John explicitly states his purpose. He says Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which aren't recorded in this book. But these are written that you may believe Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have what? You may have life in his name. So John's purpose is life, and he wants you to see these signs and believe so that you can have that. So here's the prologue that we talked about, and then the book of signs, which we're going to finish up tonight. and then we'll begin. We'll do 2 or 3 Sundays probably from the book of Glory, the second half of the book of John. So anyway, just kind of reminding you of that simple outline. So what are these 7 signs? Well, the first one is the water to wine at the Cana wedding. Then you have the stories of Nicodemus and the Samaritan woman at the well that fit in there as well. But the second sign is the nobleman's son is healed. The third sign is the healing at the pool. The fourth sign is the feeding of the crowd, the 5,000 men. The fifth sign is walking on water. And then tonight we're going to do the 6th and 7th sign that John includes as his 7 signs in this first part of the Gospel of John. The 6th one is he gives sight to a blind man. And the 7th one is the raising of dead Lazarus. So Lazarus dies and Jesus raises him back to life. So let's start with the first one, and the man who was blind. And let's read the first. I think it says John 9, 1 through 7 at the bottom of the PowerPoint, but we're going to actually go through verse 12. Let's look at these verses together. As he went along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" "Well, neither this man nor his parents sinned," said Jesus, "but this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him." And then he kind of throws this in there. As long as it's day, we must do the works of him who sent me. Night's coming when no one can work. And I'll just go ahead and interrupt here and say that, there's a theme in John about light. I don't know if you remember that from John 1. The light has come into the world, and the darkness has not understood it or overcome it. There's this theme in John, and here's Jesus referencing that again, about night and day. And so, anyway, it goes on, "While I'm in the world, I am" what? "The light of the world." And then after saying this, he spits on the ground. He made some mud with the saliva and put it on the man's eyes. "Go," he told him, "wash in the pool Siloam." And this word means sent. So the pool of the sent. And so the man went and washed, and he came home seeing. So, our 21st century sensibilities are like, ugh, spit? Why didn't he grab some water? Or why didn't he, grab some leaves or something? And I can't begin to explain this, but the purpose was the mud, okay? It wasn't the spit necessarily, but Jesus made a mud paste, right? And he had to find some liquid. It's very dry over there. And he made this mud, and he put it on the man's eyes, and then he asked him to go and wash at this pool. So let's look at a few questions here as we think about this 6th sign. What assumptions did Jesus' followers make about this man's blindness? Well, what did they suppose that was going on, right? It's hinted there in the verse, in verse 1 and 2. They felt like there was sin involved, right? That there was a sin that led to this blindness. Either the man or his parents sinned, and that was the cause of this. And so how did Jesus correct this misconception? Jesus says, "What's the man?" No. "What's the parents?" No. Whose fault is it? We always try to assess blame, right? When we get sick, where did I get COVID from? Where did I get the flu from? Where did I get this cold from? Why did I get cancer? Let's play the blame game. Where did it come from? Well, they're playing the first century version of this, theological musings, and they want to know whose fault it is that this man was born this way. He has a disability, a physical issue where he's never seen before. And so Jesus answered in verse 3, "Neither the man nor his parents sinned, but Jesus says this happened so that the work of God might be displayed in his life. Now, does that mean God caused it? I don't think that's what he's saying. I think he's saying that this is an opportunity for the glory to be given to God. And we're going to see that same theme again in just a minute in the raising of Lazarus. But so Jesus corrects their misconceptions and says it's not that, it's not sin. You know. So a curious question is, why did Jesus send the man to wash in a pool before he healed him? Right? Why didn't the mud do the trick? Right? Jesus makes this paste, and he puts it on his eyes, and he could have said, okay, wipe the paste off with your hands, boom, you're healed. Or he could have instantaneously healed him. We've seen him do that already in John, right? What's the trick? What's the catch? Well, did he want the man to show some faith? I think he did. He wanted the man to not earn his healing, but to exhibit, the faith that he needed to do this in order to be healed. And it's interesting, to my knowledge, it doesn't look like this man has asked Jesus for healing. The other situations seem to pull Jesus in, and this one Jesus seems to come to the man, and he's kind of being used as an object lesson, really. I use that word, kind of loosely, but he's become that, and so he is, I guess it's up to him, right? If he wants to be healed or not. He could just say, this is silly, and I'm not doing this. Remember, he can't see. Close your eyes for just a minute and imagine. You hear the sound of someone clearing their throat and this discussion about, why you're a sinner or your parents are and why you can't see. You've never seen before. And then you hear someone clear their throat, and then all of a sudden you feel something on your eyes, and these rough carpenter hands touch you, and they say, go wash that off. Maybe he thought, great, somebody's playing a trick on me or being mean to me. That's the story of my life. I don't think he thought that, but you got to wonder. But he goes to the pool, and he washes, and he's healed, showing some faith there, right? So after the healing, what were the responses of the townspeople? And what was the response of the blind man? As we think about this, the townspeople, says he washed and he came home seeing. So he had a home. He was not homeless. Obviously, we know his parents were still around. We're going to see that. We won't look at it, but the next part of the story, this whole thing creates a furor, right, with the Pharisees because of the Sabbath. Again, the Sabbath. You can't do this stuff on the Sabbath, Jesus. So anyway, those who see him when he's begging, now they're like, okay, something's different about this guy. Did he have scales on his eyes that now are gone? Obviously he's not groping around like he was. He's seeing. Maybe they could see the light in his eyes, and you just wonder, they're like, okay, isn't this the same man who used to sit and beg? Some said, yeah, that's him. And others are like, nope. How are your eyes opened? And some are saying like, no, he just looks like that guy, but it's not really him. So there's this whole big debate about is this really that guy? He looks different, right? And I can only imagine the joy he's expressing, right? And he's saying, I'm that guy. That's me. It's me, right? And so they want to know, okay, what happened? Did you hit your head? Have you been tricking us this whole time? What's going on? And he says, no, the man named Jesus did it. And the man they called Jesus gave me my sight. And so that's the blind man's reaction as well. So I'm curious, as we kind of apply this to our situation, how do we look at our personal weaknesses and strengths? the common reaction when something is a weakness in ours. I mean, there's multiple ways, right? We can slough it off like it's no big deal, or it's somebody else's fault that we're like this, or whine about it, complain about it. What are some of the other things that how we might react to our weaknesses, And I'm talking about personal characteristics, but I'm also talking about maybe physical burdens we have to carry. I have a couple of health issues that I have to deal with. I have to just carry the rest of my life, and sometimes it gets old. I guess that's kind of ironic that I say that. Maybe it's because I'm getting old, but it just gets worrisome, burdensome to have to deal with them, I know some of you have to deal with those things and other things. I know my dad. Think about him dealing with his health issues for at least almost 25 years, 23 years now. And I know he gets a little worn out with that. But there's an interesting kind of switch here that that Jesus does that I think is worth noticing, right? He says neither this man nor his parents sinned, right? But this happened, or he has to deal with this, right? So that the works of God might be displayed in him. So what if we looked at our weaknesses and our problems as an opportunity for God to be displayed in our lives? How we carry these burdens, how we carry these challenges, the problems, It's interesting to watch people, and I've had the opportunity, as you probably have as well, throughout my lifetime, to observe from a distance and up close the way different people carry their burdens, and it varies person to person. It's hard to compare sometimes, situation to situation. It's not always apples to apples, and sometimes we all, regardless of how strong and we're bearing up under something, we have our down moments. So this is not to say put on a face and act a certain way. I'm not encouraging that. I'm just saying that when we kind of come to an acceptance of this, whatever it is I'm carrying. I have a friend that used to say, and still says, we all have our own bag of rocks, and that's true. We each have our own bag of rocks to carry. And it's just, when you're carrying that, how do you bear up under it? And one of the things I think that's helpful about this story is that it's an opportunity for God's glory to be shared and shown. In this case, Jesus chose to heal him. That may not be our case. Just like when Paul's talking about the thorn in his flesh, and that the weakness is an opportunity for God's grace to be shown. We don't get to pick and choose, the way God's reacting to it, but it does help us when we can view our struggles, health struggles, financial struggles, relationship struggles, emotional struggles, spiritual struggles, instead of us bowing up and I can do it, maybe submitting, surrendering to God and saying, okay, God, you're going to have to take this. I can't carry it anymore. I surrender this to you. I submit to your sovereignty, your kingship. You're God, I'm not. I need your help. I need others to help me. And that's an opportunity for us to give God the glory. And so, anyway, something to think about with this sixth sign. So let's go ahead and press on into the seventh one. I want you to be thinking about, what did the sixth sign show? We talked about the power that was declared and shown in each of the previous five. So We're going to do that with the 6th and 7th here at the end. So be thinking about what that might be. What did Jesus show power over with this 6th sign? So let's go ahead and read. This is a lengthy reading, so I will motor through it. But John 11, 1 through 45, the 7th sign is the raising of Lazarus. Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, "Lord, the one you love is sick." When he heard this, Jesus said, "The sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory." Remember that, what we just said a few minutes ago, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. So he even goes into a little more detail. This is for God's glory and God's Son's glory. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. He was very close to this family. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he ran there right away. No, he stayed where he was 2 more days. And then he said to his disciples, "Let's go back to Judea." "But Rabbi," they said, "a short while ago the Jews there tried to stone you, yet you're going to go back?" Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours of daylight? Anyone who walks in the daytime will not stumble, for they see by this world's light." Here's that light-dark thing again, this symbolism, this illustration that is being used by John. It's when a person walks at night, they stumble, for they have no light. After he'd said this, he went on to tell them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I'm going there to wake him up." His disciples replied, "Well, Lord, if he's sleeping, he's going to get better, right? I mean, that's what you do when you're sick. You get some rest, you get your fluids, all that, and you get better, right?" So they're kind of naturally assuming that's what he's talking about, that he's asleep. Well, that's not exactly what his meaning is it? Well, Jesus had been speaking of his death, but his disciples thought he meant natural sleep. So he told them plainly, "No, Lazarus is dead. For your sake, I'm glad I wasn't there, so that you may believe. But let's go to him." Now, remember John's purpose. He's going to show you signs so that you'll believe and you'll have life. So Jesus is saying, well, I'm glad I wasn't there so that what? I can do a sign so that you're going to believe. Okay, that's kind of where he's going with this. So then Thomas, also known as Didymus, I always like saying that, said to the rest of the disciples, "Let's also go, that we may die with him." We give Thomas a hard time about his doubting, but here he is showing some bravery. Hey, if we're going back to die, let's do it. He realizes this is that kind of situation when he comes back to this Bethany village, which is really just outside of Jerusalem. So on his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, so again, it's very close. And many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him. But Mary stayed at home. So you have 2 sisters, 2 very different reactions, right? "Lord," Martha said to Jesus, "if you'd been here, my brother wouldn't have died." Right? If you'd been here, my brother wouldn't have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." And Martha answered, "I know he'll rise again in the resurrection at the last day." So Martha has a belief in the resurrection at the last day, but is that what Jesus is talking about? Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life." Okay, there's that life theme again. "The one who believes in me will live even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die." Do you believe this? There's those 3 words. The signs is not in there, but it's coming. The actual sign is coming. But here's that whole 3 words, right? Living, believing, not dying, believing, So John is emphasizing the fact that if you believe in Jesus, you're going to live. And Jesus asked Martha, do you believe it? Do you believe this? Yes, she replies. Yes, Lord. I believe you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who's to come into the world. So you have this confession, proclamation of who she believes Jesus is. And after she said this, she went back and she called her sister Mary aside. The teacher is here, she said, and is asking for you. When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now, she'd been kind of mourning and weeping and moping alone. Now, Jesus had not yet entered the village, but it was still at the place where Martha had met him. So before he even got into Bethany, he had gotten stopped. And when the Jews who had been with Mary in the house comforting her, right, they noticed how quickly she got up and went out. They followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. So Mary has been in mourning, and they're thinking, okay, it's, she's going to go mourn at the tomb. She's just so distraught. And when Mary reached the place where Jesus was and she sees him, she falls at his feet and says, Lord, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. I mean, that's verbatim what Martha had said. I think they'd been talking about this. They sent for Jesus, that Lazarus, the one you love, is sick, and he didn't show up. Lord, if you'd just done that, if you'd come, he wouldn't have died. We know you heal people. We believe you're the Messiah. I wish you'd come. We wouldn't be in this predicament. And we know he's going to rise again at the end, right? When everybody rises again, the last day. So this is their mindset. This is their thinking, okay, of what's going on. I want you to feel that and understand that as you read this dialogue. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. So he wants to go pay his respects, they think. And then we have John 11:35, Jesus wept. A comforting verse that Jesus weeps over one, even though he knows what he's about to do. He weeps with us. He saw how they were weeping, Mary and Martha, and they were mourning, and he saw the Jews, these friends of the family, and they're all just distraught. Now, maybe Jesus isn't crying for the same reasons they are, but he's weeping over death and the power of death currently, or that they think it holds. But remember, he said, I'm the resurrection and the life. Do you believe that? And so we're heading toward this ultimate moment, the seventh sign, if you will. And so the Jews said, see how he loved him. So Jesus is not just like got a little tear in the corner of his eye. He's weeping. And we see Jesus' emotion play out at different times, don't we? The Garden of Gethsemane comes to mind. Weeping over Jerusalem, longing, I long to gather you under my wings as a mother hen gathers her chicks. There's several times where he displays lots of emotion. His anger at the temple, the profiteering going on there. So, the meek and mild paintings and flannel graphs and things that we see of Jesus sometimes can't portray he was fully human, wholly human as well as holy God, and holy isn't with W-H-O-L-L-Y, completely God. But he experienced emotion. God created emotion. It's when we mishandle it or let it take control that it becomes a problem. But he wanted us to experience, excitement and sadness and all of the things that are in between. And so I find that verse very, very interesting. But some of them said, now remember what he just did, right? The eyes of the blind man. Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? I mean, isn't that a legitimate question? If he can heal a blind man, can't he keep a man from dying? Can't he heal this man? Why didn't he do it? Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb, and it was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. I think that's going to be foreshadowing, but it's probably also the style of those tombs back in those days. Take away the stone, he said. Whoa, 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 whoa. This is where it kind of goes off the rails. You know, he's going there to mourn. I just wanted to see where the tomb was. I'm going to put my hands on the rock and think about my friend Lazarus, and I wasn't here in time to save him, and I'm touched and moved, and he says, move the stone. What? Take away the stone. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, he doesn't even call him Lazarus at this point, just the dead man, by this time there's a bad odor, for he's been there for 4 days. You know, regardless of the way they had tried to preserve the body in ancient days, there would have been a smell. It would have been, you know, stored up in this tomb, in this cave. And so she's stating kind of a fact. Look, it's going to smell really bad as the body decomposes. Then Jesus said, didn't I tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? The glory of God. And so they took away the stone. You know, I don't know who made that decision. And I don't know, you know, are you sure? Are we going to really do this? But Jesus had that kind of authority. And they'd seen him do all kinds of crazy things. I don't know if they knew what was going to happen, but they moved it. They moved the stone away. They rolled it. And so let's see what Jesus does. Jesus looks up and he says, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I'm saying this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may what? Believe that you sent me. So he's saying this. He's calling him Father. He's saying this is for their belief. Again, what's the goal of belief? So that they can have life. Well, when he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. So he is proclaiming this. Lazarus, come out. Well, then, lo and behold, the dead man came out. His hands and his feet were wrapped with strips of linen, and a cloth was around his face. Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. Man, that just gives me chills reading that. Take off the grave clothes and let him go. He's not dead anymore. He's not dead anymore. Well, therefore, the scripture says, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did believed in him. It's interesting that they don't say they came to visit Mary and Martha, but it says, and had seen what Jesus did. They saw the sign, and therefore what happened? They believed. These signs pointed to belief in Jesus. Okay, so now, not only has he given sight back to the blind man, he has raised someone from the dead. That's a game changer. All of these are game changers, but this is a game changer. You know, the prophecies in Genesis that he would crush the head of Satan, the serpent, even though the serpent would strike his heel. This is the beginning of that. He's crushing death. You know, death, where's your victory? Death, where's your sting? He's showing, I have power over death. I'm kind of teasing you there with the end, aren't I? But let's look at a couple of questions. So how did Mary and Martha react to Jesus' late arrival? I think we've already talked about this. They were like, why didn't you come? If you'd come, what? He would still be here. You could have kept him from dying. Martha was a little more direct, and Mary stayed home a little bit and then came running out there, fell at his feet. Why did Jesus raise Lazarus from the dead instead of healing his illness? Well, why did he heal the blind man and make him go to the pool? And Jesus has reasons for things, right? Well, the hint, I think, is in the prayer when he says, I'm thankful that I wasn't here so that you could believe. I want you all to believe I'm not just a trickster, a miracle worker in that sense, where I can make bread for people. I could heal sicknesses and fevers and blind. I want you to understand I am God. I am the Messiah. I have the power to give life. I have the power over death. And so he delayed his coming in order that he would be glorified, right? So how can we share the pain of others in our life who suffer? That's kind of a reference to Jesus weeping, right? And I'm speeding up a little bit, as you can tell by our time, but how can we emulate that compassion and empathy that Jesus showed when he showed how much he loved Lazarus, and he wept and he mourned and he was touched, deeply moved, all the words that are used there. How can we do that? What are some of the things that we can do? Well, we can listen, we can sit with people, we can ask them what they need, we can pray for them, we can send cards, we can help run errands and make food and love on people and be extra forgiving and full of grace as people go through things and they hurt with loss and grief and mourning. And it's the call to be like Jesus, to do those things. It's the call to be like him and to show compassion. So let's look at this last question, and then we'll move on to the end. How do Jesus' words and actions challenge us to have more faith? Well, I know for me, and I've not really seen any comments, or we've probably been motoring through this so quickly, but if it were up to the girls, Mary and Martha, what would Jesus have done? He would have been there when they sent for him. But Jesus had a plan, and they needed to have faith, right? And that Jesus had a purpose in mind for this, and he had, when I say ulterior motives, I don't mean the negative, the evil kind. I mean that he had a purpose, a driving purpose to point to who he was and to point to the Father. So how does that challenge us to have more faith? Well, maybe sometimes when things don't go the way we plan or we think or we expect, then maybe we need to think, what is God trying to do with this? We can look at our weaknesses, right, as opportunities for God's glory, and we can look at things not going the way we would prefer them to go, or we would have them go, or if it were our choice. But that's kind of faith, right? That's kind of the way our faith grows, is to work through that. So, all right, I want to hit this last slide here as we round the corner to the end. The 7 signs, and we're going to finish up our book of signs. Jesus has power over these things. The water to wine at the wedding, when he changed that, it was a power of quality, right? The best wine for last. When the nobleman's son was healed, he had the power over distance. There's no distance that's too far for him to span, because the nobleman's son wasn't there with him when he was healed. The healing at the pool, well, the man had been sick for 38 years. So that was no obstacle for Jesus. The 4th sign was the feeding of the crowd. Well, he turned that small lunch to enough food to have everyone, 5,000 men and others, and then to have 12 baskets left over. So is quantity an issue for Jesus? He can create something from nothing. Whoops, I think I hit 2. Walking on water is a power over nature, right? To be able to show that power. And then the last 2, the blind man is given sight. Well, it's the power of disaster over disaster or misfortune. So certainly the blind man had a really rough hand dealt to him, if you will, to be born that way. It wasn't the sin of his parents or his sin. He was just born that way. But Jesus has the power over that. However we're found in life, he has the power over that bad situation. And then, as I mentioned earlier, not only does he have power over all those things, but he has power over something that nobody else does. He has the power over death. That's the game changer. He is the resurrection and the life. And so these signs point to Jesus as being the Messiah and having power over these things. And so as you look at this outline here as we wrap up, this book of signs, this middle section, they all point to Jesus being who he says he was. And so now we're going to see in the second half of John how he shows his glory. He's already begun to show it with Lazarus and these signs, starting with a wedding and some healings and a feast and walking on the water and to now raising of the dead. It's just kind of a crescendo, an ascent, if you will. Now he's going to show them the full extent of his glory, and we're going to see that the next couple of weeks as we talk about the last half of John. So I've really enjoyed being with you all and doing this live, and even though we haven't had much interaction, it's just neat to see a few names pop up here. So looks like the Browns have jumped in here, Shirley Hicks and Zella Beck. So thank you guys all for joining me tonight. And we'll wrap it up. So let's pray, and the evening will be yours. I will record something for the next 2 Sunday nights about John. And again, we'll be beginning in about John 12:13 and going forward from there. So, all right, God bless you. Father, thank you for this night. Thank you for the Gospel of John, and that these things that we see secondhand help us to believe. Help us to come to you through Jesus, the resurrection and the life. And it's through him we pray. Amen. All right, God bless everyone. Hope you have a great Memorial Day weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.